I'd like to ask stuff about cinema etiquette, if that's okay. I need your opinions on how I should conduct myself.
Okay.
So,
I don't know how equipped I am to answer, but I'll try.
well, you're a human that uses cinemas, so I assume that you're in fact an expert in this. So
Okay.
I went to see Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker, whatever it's called, I can't remember. Twice.
Wait, that's what we were supposed to see?
That yeah. What did you go see? Did you go see Jumanji?
Oh. I wish. That had The Rock in it. I love The Rock. Anyway, go on.
So I went to see the Star Wars, and I saw it twice. I saw it once in Dublin, and I saw it once in my familial home. The time in Dublin was a normal cinema going experience, but the time in my familial home, the crowd was very animated, right? And there was lots of people like whispering very loudly and drinking and getting up and going and getting sweets mid screening, etc. Putting feet on seats and so on. What's your protocol based on that? And I was kind of taken aback by how rambunctious the audience were, and I was kind of like, how does one conduct oneself in a cinema? Like maybe this is entirely normal for these people, and I'm doing it wrong. So how do you conduct yourself in the cinema? What are the do's and don'ts for cinema etiquette in your eyes?
I think it's fundamentally a question of respect to the other theatre goers. If you're disrupting other people, then there's a problem. So talking loudly, then yeah, that's not on. I think having a quiet conversation with someone beside you, which isn't really disruptive to other people there, that's fine. That's completely fine. And I'm actually quite a fan of that. Like if I'm going to the cinema with someone, although I do actually generally like going to the cinema by myself, but if I'm with someone, then I'll probably have a conversation with them to a degree. You know, we'll whisper like, "Oh, that's that guy from this film," or "Oh, what's this happening here?" kind of thing. Obviously, you got to be able to get up to go and use the bathroom and stuff. Going up to buy sweets is a bit weird because like that's missing the thing that you've come to do in order to go and to spend more money on a kind of a secondary thing. That just seems that's kind of strange to me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's, I did see a bit of a video recently on Twitter. I didn't watch the full thing, but I saw a little bit of it of a lot of people who'd gone to see Cats, the new Cats musical film. And the audience just had this like collective kind of experience at how bizarre the film is, because apparently it's totally weird. And they were all like standing up. Everyone was standing up and singing along and joining in and stuff, just kind of spontaneously. So I guess that kind of counts as an exception, that it was a shared experience between, you know, kind of the mass of the audience. So everyone was kind of doing the same thing, so people weren't disrupting each other, hopefully. But as a rule of thumb, that's an exception. As a rule of thumb, I would say just don't do anything that bothers other people. Feet on seats, no. If there's no one in the seat in front of you, maybe. But still, then I'd be kind of no.
Okay. Because the people in front of me who had their feet on their seats, I kept being drawn to them because it's like people usually don't do that. So I'm there trying to concentrate in the movie, and then my eyes get lulled down, and I'm like, why does that man have his feet on the seats? It's very distracting.
Yeah, it's movement at the bottom of your field of vision, which is kind of distracting.
Exactly. Now, you said don't be disruptive, right? So obviously we all need to be allowed to go to the bathroom, right? But like, isn't like the optional suites it's just disruptive? Like we take the disruption of getting up and going to the bathroom because you need to, but I don't know, like I would feel really bad going and getting a refill of Coke, because it's like I'm getting up for entirely optional things and disturbing everyone. And like, oh my God, Bill, so many people did it. It was crazy.
That is very strange. That is very, very strange. There was only 2 people in the theatre when I went to see it this evening.
Wow.
Yeah, it was me and one other guy.
It was 2, inclusive of Bill. Lovely.
Yeah. 2. I count myself as a person, bold as that may seem.
Now, you see, the first time I went to see this movie was, I saw it the first viewing in the morning time. So there's hardly anyone in the cinema because everyone's at work usually. I think there might have been 10, which is really low for, being in a city. But then back home, the cinema wasn't full, but there was a lot of people there.
Right.
Now, anyway, last point on this. What's your general protocol with like reacting, not cats-like, but reacting to stuff on screen? So if something shocking happens, going like audibly, what's the protocol in that? Do you mind if someone does that in your presence while watching a film?
If I feel it's like excessive or if it's like affected, then I will probably find that a bit annoying. But you're there to be entertained, and you should be able to express your entertainment at things. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
I readily laugh. That's fine. If it's something, even if it's like, I'm kind of funny. I laugh not just at things that are funny. I laugh at things that are just enjoyable. Like I just kind of laugh with joy at things that are fun, rather than things that are just humorous.
Do you do like your Bill laugh, like your patented very loud Bill laugh?
I have many laughs.
Or do you have like a cinema laugh?
No, I don't have environment specific laughs, but I have I think I have different laughs for different reactions to things. I don't know. Someone who knows me is probably, or who goes to lots of places with me is probably better suited to answer that question.
I like to think that you have a podcast laugh. I like to think that the laugh we get is the most rambunctious of all your laughs.
I would like to think so. I'd like to think so. I think you deserve the A-star premium tier laugh.
Oh, for sure. And not me, the audience, the public, Bill, the denizens. Of Artifexian.
Well, you too, Edgar. You too.
Now, and a very final thing before we start. What should we call this episode? Because we always give it one of your thesaurus word vomit titles. Space conflict. The rise of Skywalker.
Let me think. Ascent of Ascent of Aerostrider. Aerostrider's Ascent.
Yes. So Astral conflicts. I think we've used Astral conflicts before, so we should probably stick with that.
Okay. Yeah. If that's what the pattern is, stick with the pattern.
Astral conflicts. The Aerostrider's Ascent.
Mm-hmm.
I like it, Bill. I like it. All right, and with that, we can begin our teardown of Astral Conflicts, Aerostrider's Ascent.
What do you mean our teardown? That's a very negative assumption to jump straight into.
Yeah, and it's not even a correct assumption, because I was just about to ask you, what did you think of it overall before we get nitpicky? Teardown is wrong word for me. I actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, I shouldn't have used that word. What did you think of the film overall before we nitpick it?
I wasn't that into it.
Like, as in, just you were just bored, or it's just you would think it was a bit crap and you couldn't get into it?
Let me think how I can sum this up. Yeah, it was pretty dull for a lot of it. I felt a lot of the pacing was just kind of perfunctory. I thoroughly enjoyed the final act. I thought there was some really fun stuff in the final act. The final act was just a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Particularly the more epic thread rather than the dramatic thread of the final act. It was just a good romp, a good adventure. But overall, I would have had a lot of the same gripes that I had with at least what I remember not liking about The Last Jedi. I want to make it absolutely clear before we go any further on this.
I know what you're going to do. Go for it.
Absolutely clear that I didn't like The Last Jedi much. I had a lot of issues with that film. And I didn't dislike it. It's very important that I want people to know I didn't dislike it for the same reasons as angry baby men on the internet. Mm-hmm. I think there's a intellectually dishonest and bigoted and just silly industry of hate for that film, which I'm not a defender of the film. I didn't like it, but there's a lot of extremely bad and poisonous and toxic and just daft criticism of it out there, which I am not part of.
For sure. And I think anyone who has listened to our last one wouldn't get the impression that you fall into the camp that you described. And you're allowed to dislike a film even if bad people also dislike a film.
Sure.
That's entirely fine. My sort of general thing with this, I think you're spot on. I agree with you that it was a bit kind of like, it's a bit not pedantic, a bit like, workman. It just kind of did its thing, great. And then the last bit I thought was the best bit of the film. I too really did not like The Last Jedi, and I enjoyed that it kind of pulled the franchise back to a sort of stable workman-like trajectory and just like executed on that and wrapped the whole thing up in a semi-competent way. I enjoyed it that it wasn't a disaster. I could sit back, relax, and just be taken up on the whirlwind space fantasy thing. And I really liked it for that. And it's not a good film. It's not a great film by any stretch of imagination. It's not like a great work of art. I just found it an enjoyable relief from what I thought the last one was, the disaster that was the last one for me. What did you, when you were watching the thing in the cinema with your one other person, did you get any vibes from that person? Any sort of like, oh, they're really not liking it or they're really digging it? What do you think the general attitude towards this film is?
Yeah, he didn't dig it much either. We actually did exchange a little bit of commentary over the course of it, and as I said, there was no one else there that we could disrupt, so that was fine. He didn't dig it much, and I could hear his frustration at some of the same things as I was frustrated at. He was sitting behind me on the other side of the aisle, but I could still kind of pick up on his reactions, hearing sighs and mutters and things.
Yeah, I mean, because the first time I watched the thing, I thought it was just a flat out great movie because the reaction in the cinema was just like it is with any other film. And then the second time I watched it, there was a lot of people like throwing their hands up in the air, like audible sighs, like people cursing under their breath. And I was like, oh, I think the general public isn't experiencing this film like I am. And anyone I asked had a very similar reaction to you, Bill. They were just like, it was just meh, and I didn't really get into it, which is mind blowing because, like I said, I actually really enjoyed it, whilst fully acknowledging that it isn't a great piece of cinematography. So there you go. There's the general things. Shall we do our tear down? Will you jump in when you got something to say? Yeah, and I'm just going to go through stuff.
Let's do that. Give me a moment. I'm going to take off my jumper. 1 second.
Okay.
And that means I have to take off my headphones. Hold on a second. I'm just a little bit warm.
That's okay.
Well, I took off one of my jumpers. I was wearing two, but I'm still somewhat jumper. Just less jumper than before. Are you wearing
a Christmas jumper?
I'm not wearing the jumper I'm currently wearing is red. But it's not a Christmas jumper. It's just a red jumper. But do you know what I did get?
What did you get, Bill?
I got a gold sequin Santa hat, and the sequins are reversible, so it's also a silver sequin Santa hat.
Wow, that's shock and bougie altogether.
Yeah, and for my birthday a couple of months ago, I got a red smoking jacket, red sort of crushed velvet smoking jacket. So that's my Christmas outfit for this year. That's
baller, man, and I'm not even joking. Anyway, so point one, I wrote. Now, I will say, all of these notes I've taken, I took on second viewing, so there is a bit of kind of meta commentary sprinkled in with the chronology. Because the very first thing I wrote was stunning visuals. I think visually the film was really fun with like big bombastic sci-fi backdrops, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, spoilers from this point.
But sure, that's fair. We probably should have said that upon opening, but yeah, spoilers from this point.
Well, we haven't spoiled anything so far, so we got away with it. Okay. Now, some nice visuals.
Next point then, Palpatine. Here's a spoiler. When I first heard this, I was like, where did Palpatine come from? He wasn't mentioned at all. And then suddenly it's like, Palpatine, as if we're all meant to know that Palpatine's still a thing. Like, that wasn't... Was that established at all? Like zombie Palpatine?
No.
So here's my theory about this. I think a lot of this movie was setting itself out to just retcon a lot of what happened in Jedi. And I really think that what's the man? Snope. The guy.
Snoke's.
So it was Snoke?
The Supreme Leader Snoke.
Snoke, exactly. I really think he was meant to be just the big bad throughout all three films. But then they, for whatever reason, because of just no one seemed to have a plan, killed him off in the second one. And then they were like, oh, well, damn, we're missing a big bad. We must invent a bigger bad than the big bad. So Palpatine, I guess. So I think if the second one didn't do all the weirdness, I think if you just had Snoke in place of Palpatine, everything would be fine. But having Palpatine there is weird, very strange.
Yeah. See, my issue with the previous film was that it had a load of really good stuff in it, but that it never quite committed to. It always kind of shied away from committing to its bold choices. So, like when they killed Snoke, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting because he is obviously set up as the Palpatine analog. And they were saying, you know, we're gonna do this differently this time. This is my reading of it at the time. We're going to do it differently this time. That Snoke gets taken out of the picture, and then it becomes about the conflict between Rey and Kylo. And that's pretty cool. And then they just undo that by, first of all, in Last Jedi, by getting Luke Skywalker to solve the problem. And have the final fight, and then in this film by re-establishing Palpatine, and then undoing a lot of what happened in Return of the Jedi, like in the conclusion of the original trilogy.
Oh yeah, of course.
It takes away the power of that conclusion to that trilogy.
Yeah, now that's going to enrage a lot of the people we spoke about before. They're not going to be very happy about reducing the value of the original trilogy. I can see that going south on the internet.
Oh, I don't give a damn what they get angry about. They're going to find something to get pissy about anyway.
Oh yeah, no more that I just, as you said that there, I was suddenly aware that there are very heated arguments going on the internet. I didn't even think when watching that the appearance of Palpatine changes the original thing. That didn't even enter my mind at all. So that's just the thought that came in my head. Yeah, man, I don't think it was, I really, like, I can't get in the minds of the filmmakers for the second one. I don't think it was a case of doing bold things and doing interesting things. I just think it was a case of just subversion porn almost. That's just everything we can subvert. Let's just subvert it to make this film seem smarter than it is.
Yeah.
And then,
but it didn't commit to it though.
Yeah, but they still killed Snoke. Like, they still subverted the trope of the big bad remains for the three things. So they that one they kind of executed on, and then they went back on it because I really do think that this whole franchise kind of just was a bit aimless. Do you know? Because if you think about the first one, it's just like, oh crap, what do we do? Let's just remake the first one, and then we'll kick the problem of storytelling down the road a little bit. And then it comes to the second one, and then they're like, oh crap, what do we do? Oh, okay, it'll look really smart if we just play with the audience expectation based on what the first one set up, without kind of crafting a good, coherent new story. And then the third one comes along and was like, well, Jesus, everyone hated the second one. We need to undo all of that. And then somehow also just wrap this thing up. So the whole thing just seems like no one had a coherent story ever, and they were just winging it. That's my impression of the whole thing. But we will never know.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think they bowed to the pressure of the angry fan reaction and allowed themselves to be constrained by that for this film.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think so, for sure. Next point, Joy, can I move on?
Yeah.
I have here written iceberg planet ? At one point, they pull into a location. I can't remember why they were doing this. It was at the very start of the film. And the planet looked like...
It's at the very start. They're picking up a message from the spy within the First Order.
Bingo. The planet they land on, it looked like an iceberg in space, man. And I immediately thought, that can't happen. What are they doing? That's really weird. And then I was like, is it an iceberg in space, or is this planet just very dark? I was a bit confused about that. It's not a critique here or there. It's just kind of that was a weird visual design thing. I didn't really understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I have here is there was that light skipping bit as they escape said planet. The TIE fighters are following them. I wrote here, if TIE fighters don't have warp drive or whatever, they can't enter hyperspace, apparently. as per the original theory, and it was kind of like, I wonder, is there new TIE fighters with new tech? Again, just a thought I had. And then we skip to Leia. We see Leia. And I was like, man, Leia looks really strange. Like very odd. And I was like, what is going on? And then I started thinking, like, have they CG'd her like they did with Rogue One? And she proceeded to get stranger and stranger for me as the movie went on. And I went online afterwards, and apparently it was just a fair bit of like just keying her into the scene, because they had a limited amount of footage with her, and they had to just make that story work somehow. So like splice in the correct dialogue lines in places to try and cobble together a thing. And upon reading that, I was kind of like, well, Jesus, actually, they didn't do a bad job there. Like, it's coherent. Like, she might look a bit strange, and if she's not looking in the right directions and things like that, but like the story there is it is coherent. So it's both credit to them, and obviously unfortunate for the film that that Leia, who's Leia's actress? What's her name?
Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher. It's unfortunate for the film that Carrie Fisher died, because that was clearly a serious problem for them.
Carrie Fisher was just cool. Carrie Fisher was really cool.
She was just cool. She was really cool. I suppose this leads into the next point. Leia as a Jedi Master. That's bumping up potential Leia coolness, because, again, don't kill me, internet, here for not knowing my Star Wars trivia inside out, but I don't think she was... The notion of her becoming a fully trained Jedi was never talked about in the original stuff, wasn't it? Like, there was some insinuation that she had the Force thing. She was Force sensitive, but there was no training of her in the originals, correct?
In the original trilogy, I don't think there was, and you do see a montage or a flashback of her and Luke training together in this film, which must take place after Return of the Jedi. So yeah, it had been, as you say, it had been implied in the original trilogy. I don't know if there was anything about it in what was episode 7 called?
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens. I don't know if there's anything about her being Force sensitive in the Force Awakens. And then in episode 8, in The Last Jedi, she appears to die and then flies through space, and no one brings it up. And like, my complaint was never that she has a superpower. That's cool. That is very, very dope. But like, I've never heard of anyone flying in space in Star Wars before, and everyone just seems to roll with it. Like, everyone just kind of assumes, oh yeah, that's fine, that happened, and no one like ever mentions it again, and it's so jarring for me.
Now that's fair, but I will go a step further and say that I do have a problem with like having that particular superpower, because we talked about it at the time last year or 2 years ago. It's just like, treat space with more it's more of a dangerous environment than simply you can float out there and you just get a little bit cold, and then you wake up and you fly back to your spaceship. Like, treat space like the sort of dangerous environment that it is. So I was good, like, that's a bit cartoony, silly for me.
Is it though?
No, we went through this last time. Like, it's not the sort of like, if you get sucked into space, you immediately like shrivel up into a ball. And you can be subject to outer space for a little while without massive repercussions. But it's still not like I don't think it's as comfortable as they made it look like in The Last Jedi, or whatever the thing is. Is The Last Jedi the movie before this one? I get confused with the names now.
Last Jedi.
There you go.
Last Jedi is episode 8.
And I think a really good sort of a depiction of like surviving space was the first episode of Star Trek Discovery. Michael Burnham had to jump through space basically to get from one part of the ship that's being destroyed to another, and it was a real, like, it was it was a big deal, and you can see as she flew through space, like, she was beginning to suffer physically, and like she still made it, and like that's ace. I just think that the depiction in Jedi was just too fantasy. I wanted a little bit more sci-fi in that for me.
There's a good scene in, I don't know if you've watched any of The Expanse. There's a good scene in an episode of the first season of The Expanse, where there's an ice miner or an asteroid harvester or something working in like the asteroid belt, and there's a bit of something comes loose inside his helmet while he's in vacuum, and he opens the helmet to cold vacuum of space and like removes it and closes it up again. And loads of people found that really, really jarring. But like it would probably be doable.
Yeah.
It would probably be doable. He doesn't like hold his breath. He exhales, opens it up, the suit depressurizes, he takes out whatever's inside, he closes the helmet again and repressurizes, and it's completely fine. And I just thought that was kind of a neat little touch. Because like a lot of properties would just be like, he was opened to hard vacuum and bam, his head explodes. Which, I mean, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Again, I would not call for surviving space. I would not call for all space encounters to end with someone's head exploding. I think that's kind of a thing that we used to do and we don't do now in film. I just wanted to be a little bit more to show a little bit more discomfort than The Last Jedi did.
Taken with a little bit more gravity.
Oh God, Bill.
Hey.
Oh, it hurts so much.
Hey, did you get it?
I got it, Bill. I got it,
Edgar?
and I wish I didn't. But yeah, Leia as a Jedi Master. Do you like that idea of kind of like, this wasn't really established, but we're going to give you a quick little scene to just, establish it, move on? Do you think it's good storytelling? Do you like this upgrading of Leia to Jedi Master? Do you not? What are your thoughts?
I don't know if Jedi Master is exactly what was said. I mean, she had some Jedi training and she took it, reasonably far. I think and I suppose I'm not completely au fait with what all of the things in the lore are, but Leia having some Jedi training, fine by me.
Yeah, and I think it plays a little bit like The Wire, with the sort of like stuff happens off scene that you have to imagine that this world continues off screen. And just kind of like drawing our attention to it very briefly and saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, this world exists beyond the scope of this movies." I think that's a really cool touch. I really like that.
Yeah, and a rare one for Star Wars.
And a rare one for yes, exactly. Usually everything is explained in excruciating detail,
and everything happens to the same 7 people and their kids.
Yeah, exactly. Now after that, we. I'm assuming all the characters come together. We have Poe, Finn, Rey, BB-8, all the central players come together and they embark on a mission. I wrote in my notes, ensemble cast finally, and I cannot believe it took till 20 minutes of the third movie for us to get all these characters gelling and riffing off one another, and it was great that they did, and I think they worked really well. I enjoyed the bickering. I enjoyed Finn and Poe's sort of like almost combative buddy friendship sort of thing going on. I think the three of them played really well off.
It was cheesy, but it was fine.
Yeah, but it's Star Wars, man. I'll take cheese. It's a kids' film. I don't care. I'm not looking for I'm not looking for best actor performances here. Cheesy is totally fine by me. And I'm glad they finally did it, and they should have done this straight off the bat. Like in The Force Awakens, they should not have had Poe just disappear for the entire film. In Last Jedi, they shouldn't have split the team up, or rather, actually, they should have split the team up in the second one after having done the ensemble thing in the first one, and then this should have been the recombining of the team to like go against the big bad. So they didn't execute that very well over the trilogy, but I'm glad they did something here in the last one. Agree?
I mean, I wasn't. I wouldn't necessarily require that for them to be the trio. It's not an integral part of the experience for me. But I was confused by why they were being talked about as this ensemble trio from the very first film, from Force Awakens, and as you say, Poe Dameron is barely in that film.
Yeah.
And people were talking, like, I went to see it and kind of didn't know that much about it beforehand, and hadn't like engaged with the kind of fandom about it at all. And then when I came out and started reading things, and people were describing them as like, oh, it's the new trio, And I was like, how is it the new trio?
Exactly.
Like, your man is barely in it.
And I think behind the scenes, though, internet, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Poe was meant to play a bigger role in that first one. But then, I don't know,
Right.
something happened. And the same with your one, the pumpkin, Maz Kanata. she was meant to play a much bigger role in the first one. And again, something happened there. So it goes back to, if that is the case, and I'm remembering that correctly, it goes back to this sort of feeling that like it was all a bit leaderless and no one had like one sort of like, this is the vision, lads, let's execute it. It just seemed like people were winging it, which is not great, and it leads to a mediocre trilogy in my mind. Final Order, Bill, what did you think about this, the move from the First Order to the Final Order?
I mean, I guess you're going to have an integer of orders 2 as an adequate integer to have. I mean, it was a little bit abrupt.
Yeah, but what did you think about the notion of there being an integer of orders? Like, could they not have stuck?
I don't understand what the distinction between the first and the final is. It's not just the same organization. Why do you set up the final or the First Order as a threat, right? And then the First Order are enough of a threat to cripple the rebellion or the Republic or the resistance. Mm-hmm. To cripple the resistance in The Last Jedi. And why do you need to introduce a new but yet identical organization to replace them to be a threat in this film? It's very messy.
Yeah, agreed. Fully agreed. I couldn't for the life of me work out why the hell they're doing this. Like, it's just, and again, I think maybe it's because of, again, the Jedi thing, like retconning Jedi and having to, like, introduce Palpatine. It's like, oh god, but what's Palpatine actually bring? Well, Snoke had the First Order, so we have a new big bad, so the big bad needs to also have his thing. So Final Order, I guess. So I think it's a consequence of retconning. And I just think it's messy, like you said, and it's a bit kind of like, I don't know, like it's a bit, yeah, it's just ratcheting up the ante that doesn't actually get ratcheted up. Like I didn't enjoy that.
It doesn't really increase the threat at all.
No, and showing no amount of like the giant fields of Star Destroyers was kind of like meh. Like it was almost like prequel-esque level of like, if we put more stuff on screen, it's more impressive. And I'm like, no, like threat isn't just more ships. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so over the top that it becomes sort of contextless.
Exactly, 100%. Next note I have here is Rose. I feel sorry for Rose. She got cheated. Yeah, she got cheated. Another example of retconning going on, and it's just
and bowing to fan reaction.
Yeah, because she, without getting too much into nasty stuff, I remember reading a lot of. She got a real bad end of it at the end of that last one, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
While the function that her character played in The Last Jedi is just the kind of thing that I'm not that interested in films. Like, it was this kind of, it felt like a tacked on romance. I'm not into romance in movies generally, and especially when it's just like, it feels added on. And this kind of sacrifice to save Finn, I don't know, it's the kind of thing that annoys me in Star Trek and, or in Star Wars. Star Wars, it's probably just not for me because it does a lot of this kind of thing. But yeah, she got hounded off Twitter, like.
Oh, did she?
The amount of hate she got. Yeah, she got so much hate from fans that Kelly Marie Tran left Twitter, and I don't think she's ever been back.
Oh man, that's
she got personally targeted and bullied by Star Wars fans. No, I mean, obviously not by all Star Wars fans, but there was a section of entitled Star Wars heads who were so incensed at the existence of her character that they personally harassed the actor, which is just disgraceful.
I mean, but that's so... I realise I'm preaching to the choir here, but that's so daft. Like, because all the character is, the way it was written, was just like a pretty bland, boring character. Like, it's so... just, it blows my mind that you would lose your mind over that. You just kind of go like, oh, I didn't dig that. That wasn't for me. And then you just move on with your life. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, when that's been the problem in a lot of the reaction to the previous film. It's like, yeah, I didn't like the film, but like, just go get over it. Like, go on with your life. Go watch a different film. There's like at least 10 or 12 other films you could watch.
Exactly, yeah. And then now when all this clears and like, 20, 30 years down the line, when people watch this without the sort of like context, the retconning of roles is just going to seem so weird in the trilogy. It's like, oh, all right, we've added on to the cast, great, and then in the next movie she has like 3 lines, and it's just the oddest thing. It's just that really, I really felt for the actress, because that's not good. Now my next point here, again, stop me at any time if you have a note that you need to jump in with. Kylo Ren's remaking of the mask, another sort of retconning idea. It was just stupid. With the like,
I don't remember the context of the mask breaking.
Oh, isn't it? But in the last one, didn't he all like, again, another one of the sort of like, we're going to be clever here with subverting things. Like they wanted to subvert the sort of masked black figure by just destroying the mask and have him run around the whole film without a mask. Because this is new Star Wars, we don't need masks. I think that was the context for it in the Jedi. I think that was it.
Okay.
And so they reforged it because it looks better with the mask. The mask is cool, but like adding the sort of like go faster red cracks was just like, lads, come on, like Jesus Christ. it looked a bit silly.
It didn't bother me.
No, I wasn't, like, again, I'm not like bothered. I just was like, I think that's a bit silly. She could have just reforged it, and all those cracks could have just been added to the litany of other cracks. It's the glowing bright red cracks that just really put me off. But anyway, my next note here is that then we move to a scene inside like a boardroom on one of the ships where Kylo Ren Vader chokes one of the people at the desk, and that's another point where I was like, it's just really lame, because like we've seen it. It's just like we need a new Death Star. We don't need Darth Vader 2.0 force choking another person in a boardroom again. Like, just like do new things here, film. Come on, like.
Yeah, and I don't think it. I mean, if you accept that it's there to build on the arc of Kylo imitating Vader, I guess it fulfills that role, but I'm not a big fan of that as a conceit anyway, so...
Yeah, for sure.
Especially after nearly giving up on it in the previous film, and then chickening out of giving it up in the previous film. This retreats even further away.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, the last one, it was very like, we're not going to just do Vader, and now it's like, well, we're going back to do Vader, and it's just, retconning is a serious problem with this film. Next point, the trio plus droid and C-3PO go on a tour of various planets looking for the MacGuffin. The first planet they land on, can't remember its name, but it's the one that had like the Festival of Colors. Really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy in Star Wars seeing like funky aliens in their funky environments doing their thing, and I really got a sense of like, we're on an adventure, we're seeing far-flung places with cool people, and we get to hear like cool languages. Really enjoyed it, and it was visually very pleasing, very good. 10 out of 10, 12 out of 12. Then what else I got here? I have no comments on Lando Calrissian. Do you have anything on him? He looks a bit old, a bit like he's put on a bit of weight, but other than that,
he is like in his 70s or something, so it's fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. But just more of
also
like,
Billy D. Williams just seems lovely. In seeing like interviews and stuff with him recently, he just seems lovely.
That's the Lando actor, yeah.
I'm fairly sure that's his name. Yeah,
I just don't know his name. I'm sure he's lovely. He looks like a lovely man. I have nothing to say about him. It's just like, we had to get him back because we need to see all the old people for some reason. Grand. Doesn't really bother me. Force FaceTime. I still don't like Force FaceTime, where Kylo and Rey talk to one another, like as if they're like Skyping. Still don't like that. And I was thinking, second viewing, I was like, you know what they should have done? Well, they shouldn't have done this because it would have been ripping someone off. But they really should have done a Stranger Things thing. So when the two of them are connected and talking to one another, they go into like a black void. So we don't have this jarring cutting between vastly different scenes. And then later on in the film, where we see that when they're doing the force FaceTiming, they can objects in their vicinity can be sort of like magically teleported to the other person. That would have worked so much better in like a void sort of scenario. So like the two of them connect, they're in like a featureless black room. If one of them touches an item beside them, like say Vader's mask, that then becomes apparent to the other person in the void, and they can interact with it. I think that would have been so much cooler than the sort of really jarring jump cuts back and forth.
Hard disagree.
Hard disagree? Oh, why?
Yep,
Tell me.
Yep. I think, I mean, like, as you said, it's been in other stuff. I think there's a lot of black void content out there. And I think having it the way it currently is reinforces that they're still in there, like they're still aware of the current environments they themselves are in. But they're being perceived by the other one as being in the environment that the other one is in. So, you know, Kylo sees Rey before him and Rey sees Kylo before her in the environment that each of them is currently inhabiting. Whereas if it was in a black void, then it would be like, oh, you know, are they blacking out? Are they totally unaware of what's happening there? Is that black void a specific other location?
Yeah.
So for those two reasons, no, I quite liked that. I liked that whole thing overall and how they were able to influence each other's environments. I thought that was kind of cool. Because it doesn't really exactly make sense. It's a little bit unexplained. And, you know, it's in a film about space wizards, then, you know, I think it's okay to have a little bit of mystery to the magic. And that was definitely that.
Yeah,
and there's not much of that else in to the Force. The Force is kind of between, you know, its exposure over 40 years in media and expanded universe and Wikipedia and like loads of films at this stage. You know, a lot of what the Force does is understood. So, you know, that's kind of not really understood. And I like having a little bit of magic left in the magic.
Yeah, I will fully agree with the objects interacting thing. I really do like the mystery of that, and I found myself questioning it, and I thought that was really fun. I suppose the thing that I just find jarring is literally like the aesthetics of how it's done, like the jump cuts and things like that. I take your point, and I think you make perfect sense. It's just, to my sensibilities, I require something different from that, you know? But then...
Yeah, I didn't find it jarring.
Yeah, well, sure. Like, if you don't find it jarring, then it's all gravy, which is good because there's a lot of Force FaceTime in this film. Now, so then on said planet with Festival of the Colors, there is a speeder chase, where we're introduced to new stormtroopers. They fly now is the quote with zooming stormtroopers. I wrote here, speeder chase like pod race, only fun and shorter. I liked it.
Yes, I had no objection to it. It was fine. It was an entertaining little sequence. Apparently that was actually filmed for the first film.
No, really?
Apparently so, according to Graham Norton on the Graham Norton show the other night. Because Daisy Ridley was on it. And they played a bit of that clip, and I looked away because I didn't want to see anything before I saw the film fully. But I saw a little bit of the stormtroopers being shot in the air, not enough to figure out what was actually happening, but then when I saw it in context I recognized it from the Graham Norton show. And he said to Daisy Ridley, oh, that was actually from the first film, wasn't it? And can you even remember, you know, the context of what you did that in, or was it hard to put the two things together, something like that. So yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I suppose it makes sense. It obviously would have been for the Jakku sequence. I wonder why. I wonder if that's why we're back on a desert planet again. Because that's a big fit. Which I actually, do you know what though? I actually don't really mind that, because it's not so much the planet that's the thing that I'm looking for. It's all the cultures that inhabit it. So like the fact that they had the Festival of Color on a desert planet is totally fine. And in any case, a lot of the planets in a universe are going to be lifeless rocks that have been made habitable by aliens or whatever. So I totally buy the let's just keep going to desert planets. It's grand. It's just a visual
Or, for all we know, it was an incredibly diverse planet and they just went to a desert area.
For sure, totally, exactly. So I don't really find it too jarring. So next point is Finn. Oh, yeah, so they fall into sinking sand while they're tracking down a ship, and Finn says to Rey, "I never told you a thing." And he says this twice in the film, that he never told her something, but he doesn't get an opportunity to say it. No payoff at all. What was going on there? I want to know what Finn never told her. Like, it seemed to be building up to, like, I love you sort of thing, which would have been another retcon on the sort of, he's meant to have this romantic thing with Rose, but that didn't go somewhere because obviously Rey and Kylo at the end. So I was like, that's weird. And the fact that they double emphasized it, very strange storytelling.
Yeah. Don't know what that was about.
Yeah, again, probably mismanagement. Retconning and mismanagement. Story of this film. The Knights of Ren, Bill, they're cool. We needed more of them.
They are. I felt that was another thing, like emphasizing Rey, Finn, and Poe as a trio. That we were kind of told that they're badass and interesting, but we never that's never we were only vaguely aware of them if we only watched the films. We're only vaguely aware of them by the start of episode 9. And they still don't even get to do that much in this film. Like, they go around looking menacing, and then they have a fight scene at the end, and that's it. I think this is a thing that Star Wars does a lot, is that it has this cool background flavor, but it's not always just for the sake of having cool stuff. It's so they can hook that in and make a spin-off or a prequel or a sequel or something about it at another time.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I'm a bit morally against that. I don't think it was a problem though. They just were menacing. I think that's entirely cool. They just were like a silent, like steampunky like gang for me, and I thought that was class. But I just wish they had been
steampunky.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's the correct word, but all their kind of like big mechanical, weapons, like they were like these big mechanical lumps of yolks, and their helmets were all like black metal, and they looked like they were forged from metal. It's maybe not steampunky, but it's, I don't know, a certain like industrial aesthetic, perhaps.
Okay.
That I really enjoyed.
I see what you mean, I guess.
And they were just like we don't speak, we just go around intimidating people. Loved it. I just wish they had established it earlier. And maybe like before we thought it would be cool if like there was, I don't know, 3 of them, say, for example, and then in the earlier films, and then as the films went on, the gang sort of expanded to its full might, and that presented this sort of threat. That would have been cool. But again, for me anyways, and mismanagement that they weren't set up. Yeah, because on the thing that you were saying, the only reason I know about the Knights of Ren is because I was watching some interview with some Star Wars thing, and the interviewer goes, "Oh, I can't wait to see more of the Knights of Ren," and I was like, "Who are the Knights of Ren?" And I had to Google for it and be all like, "Oh, they were in that, like when Kylo Ren burnt down the Jedi place or whatever, that flashback. They were in that briefly, and that was it." And I was like, why does this person want to see more of the Knights of Ren? I was really confused by it. And again, like you were saying, is we were told to care about them without actually seeing them, which again, not good.
Yeah.
Now, what do I have here? The next thing that happened that I have a note on is Kylo and Rey force pull on a ship as it's flying away. My first note is the force pull is stupid. I just thought it didn't work for me. And then the next note is the force tug of war is stupider. And then I wrote, force pulling, if you're going to use it, should have some sort of physical effect on the user. So like, if you're going to channel the force so much that you're going to take down or you're going to like halt a ship in motion, like it'd be cool to see like actual physical effects, like veins popping or like skin flaking or something where you really feel like this takes a toll on the character, and then have that toll linger afterwards for a bit. But it's just like they perform this amazing feat, and then it's just kind of like the explosion aside and like the ramifications of Chewie being dead, they was just kind of like, oh, that's fine. I just did that. That's fine. You know, I want there to be more of an effect. It's more gritty. Hard disagree again.
No, it's not a hard disagree. I see what you mean, but I feel like that's not for Star Wars.
Really?
I can't. Yeah. I think like using dark side powers has an effect on you. You know, like use of force lightning makes you age horribly or whatever. But yeah, no, I see what you mean, and I think that's like it's a cool thing to have, but I just don't think it's a Star Wars thing.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that. I'm glad though you think it's cool, because I think it's cool too. Next note, Chewie should have died.
It's a Dragon Ball Z kind of thing.
It's a Dragon Ball Z kind of thing. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Next note, Chewie should have died! ! Thoughts?
This is more of the same problem as in The Last Jedi of failure to commit. Like, it's like, oh, okay. Like, okay, I would have thought it was a fairly cheap death anyway, to be honest. Like, I think it was a little bit, if they had followed through with it, it would have been like, yeah, okay, I guess, whatever. But not following through on it is probably worse. That it's like, we'll do this and everyone will gasp, and then in 5 minutes time it will be irrelevant because he's not actually dead.
Yeah.
And it's like reluctance to upset the status quo.
Yeah, for sure.
Or do anything bold.
And it would have worked. I was talking to the captain about this afterwards. It would have worked so perfectly with the rest of the storyline, in that, like, so for me anyways, this film was meant to be about, Kylo changing sides and the potential of Rey changing sides, and that the sort of internal conflict with them. And it would have been great for Rey to have killed Chewie, like actually kill Chewie, and then to do like to go like full PTSD mode. PTSD? Post-traumatic stress? Yeah, PTSD mode, and really like, recede into herself and get like darker because of this, the trauma she's experienced of killing a friend. And that would have helped sell her, like, when she meets her evil counterpart, it would have helped sell the idea, like, oh god, she might actually turn. But because there was no repercussions for that, it's just like, I didn't feel like there was a strong Rey will ever turn. And I think that was the moment there with Chewie's death where you could have really sold that sort of like, this could go either way sort of thing.
Also, like, the thing about her using force lightning there, which is like a Sith thing to do, it kind of, like, where did that come from? Kylo says that he kind of made her do it, but it's, I don't know, it doesn't really make, like, how did he make her do that? Or, by goading her into doing it, what was she thinking to achieve? It was just, it kind of, that jarred a little bit for me.
Really? Oh, I didn't even read it like that. I just read it like she was so angry at, like, Kylo being there that, like, her negative emotions took over, and because she's like a Palpatine, she had that sort of ability in her, and it just came out to her shock and surprise. I didn't even realize that it was Kylo doing it. I didn't even clock that at all.
Does she doesn't know she's a Palpatine at that point, does she?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so, cool. We'll talk about that when we get to there.
Okay, cool. We'll put a pin on that one. Next note.
Put a pin on that one.
More sort of retconning. The Legion General character should be Hux. Hux should be the Legion General. Why do we have another Hux character?
Yeah.
There's two Huxes, man. Like, what has Hux got to do? It's just, it's so bad. That's crazy. Yeah, it's no good. I'm assuming no complaints there, yeah?
Like, I kind of thought we were supposed to know who he was, to be honest. It's like, I've forgotten this character, but I don't think he is in another film.
Oh no, I think he's
or previously introduced.
Yeah, I think they just he's a new character completely.
I want to look this up real quick.
Go for it. Maybe they might have they might have elevated a side character or something, but I thought he was just completely new.
Yeah, no, he's only in episode 9. He's not in anything else. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's just, and like, silly. Like, it should have been Hux. Jesus, like, it's not hard. Like, that's so basic. Like, come on. Next note I have after that is we don't need more droids. And this is where the gang gets an additional droid, the little sort of cone head on wheels. And I was like, why are we getting more characters here? Like, are we not meant to be wrapping up? Like, stop tacking people onto this thing. And there was another one earlier with Poe's girlfriend, perhaps romantic acquaintance from the past. And I was like, are we going to tack her on as well? Like, stop gaining characters. This is what should happen in the second movie.
Yeah, I liked, we were kind of given hints about Poe's backstory, and cool stuff that we don't really know about him. But then I felt it was kind of leaned a bit heavily. It was leaned on a bit heavily. And we were supposed to care more. We were supposed to have more emotion, like the whole thing, like the suggestion of the romance between them. Like I felt like we were expected to care about that.
Oh yeah.
Without any context for caring about it.
Yeah. There was. I didn't care at all, Bill.
Yeah.
Zero caring came from me there. Next note: parents are no one. Another retcon. That one really annoyed me. That one I was kind of like,
I threw my hands up in the air and muttered quite loudly at that one. I was so that was the best thing about The Last Jedi was that it threw that out the door. Rey is no one. Rey she's not involved in this because of blood. She's involved in this just because of herself.
Yeah.
That was the single best thing about The Last Jedi, and they tossed it out.
And the way they tossed it out, it almost seemed like almost like someone tweets a thing, right? Someone pushes back against a tweet, and then someone goes, "Oh yeah, well, what I actually meant by that was X." And I'm like, "Oh, it's such a lazy retcon as well." It was,
yeah.
It was no.
Your parents are no one, but your granddad was Magic Space Hitler.
Magic Space Hitler, man. If we weren't like contractually obliged to call this Astral Conflict, Aerostrider's Ascent, you've thrown out some banger titles over the course of this past hour. I wonder, can I just store them in a text document and just use them randomly throughout the year? They're great.
In case I don't say something funny in another episode.
Just have a bank of Billness. Okay, so then the next thing I have here is we're obviously back on the ship. Hux's turn. Hux's betrayal of the First Order I had here is weak. I didn't think it was stupid because looking back on it, you're like, oh, I can kind of see it. Like the whole way through, he had an adversarial relationship with Kylo, but like the reason for turning is just so lame. Like if I was thinking about like if I was Hux, why would I do that? It's like if I go against the First Order, what am I to gain here? So like if I make it, if I make it and the Resistance win, the Resistance are just going to prosecute me for war crimes, or just like maybe not like impose the harshest possible sentences, but certainly like my life is going to be diminished afterwards. If I'm found to be a traitor, I'm going to be shot. Like there's no upside, and his only motivation is like I don't like the guy above me, so I'm going to betray like the clearly best bet in this conflict. And if he knows anything about Palpatine and the massive fleet, like who would go against that? Like now it'd be different if he had a moral turn and he's like, I've seen this army and these dead people walking and I can't go with that. Then it's like, yeah, okay, I can get that. People do things against the odds for moral reasons all the time. But if it's not for moral, it's just weak. I found it very weak.
I could see, I could get behind turning on them just out of spite for an individual. I think that's kind of, I don't know. I take your point that it's yeah, I could. I think that could be cool storytelling. If he'd like tried to go with them or something, but I think it was just like very silly that I'm going to let you go and then I'm going to stay here because that doesn't look suspicious at all. Like, just people in Star Wars are just not competent at a lot of things.
Yeah, no, they're not.
And that's an example of it.
I did like the kind of almost very camp reveal where he's like, "It is I, the traitor," and they're all like, "Oh!" shocked face. I was like, okay, I like the way you lead into that.
How does he know that they know there's a spy?
Yeah, exactly.
These people are terrible at spying. Like,
I didn't even think about that. That is hilarious. Like, he has no way of knowing. That is fantastic. So what do I have next? I wrote here that Palpatine granddaughter is cool. I must have at the time really liked the idea of Rey being a Palpatine.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't write anything else though about that. Maybe because I was just expecting her to be a Skywalker, and I was like, oh, I like that she's evil. Oh no, I tell you what I was thinking of. Sorry, I was thinking of a yin yang sort of thing. I like the sort of the yin yang setup where Kylo, the ostensibly bad character, comes from like ostensibly good people, is of good stock, so to speak, and then Rey, the ostensibly good character, is from bad stock. And I kind of like the idea of like we are not our ancestors. And then I've spoken before in this podcast about being of German descent, and a thing that like if I were to look back there, it may get ugly, and I remind myself that I am not what came before me. And I felt in that moment where it's like, oh, Rey is of evil spawn. I'm like, it was cool. It was a cool idea. But I fully take your point that her being literally no one as well is also very cool.
Mm. That's an interesting kind of the reversal of it, and rejecting kind of what's implied by her blood. That you could do something cool with that, yeah. But definitely for me, it's better to it's much more interesting for her to be no one, and that makes the universe feel bigger for me, and it makes it feel kind of more expansive.
But like seeing as this is,
but I hadn't considered it your way. Yeah.
Aww. I had an idea that Bill didn't think was terrible straight off the bat. This is the best Christmas present you could have ever given me, Bill.
You make me sound like an awful contrary fella.
So the next point I have really. So they picked up a dagger. That's one of the sort of MacGuffin-y type things that are going on. They land on a planet where the remnants of the Death Star was on the planet, and they use this dagger to locate the other MacGuffin-y thing that they need. I have here, the dagger as locator is just super silly. And like not silly as in like camp Star Wars silly, just silly as in like I found myself being like, oh, because it's like, sorry, for people who haven't seen this, I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you haven't, but the dagger like opens up and there's a little pointery bit, and if you match the shape of the dagger up with the shape of the remnants of the Death Star, the dagger, the pointy bit points to the MacGuffin. And when I watched that, I was kind of like, yeah, but that depends on how you stand relative to the Death Star. And like,
the distance away you are,
the
angle you're at, like you have to be looking at the correct bit of the Death Star.
Exactly. Like, and it'd be different if like that was a like, let's say they had to go to some, I don't know, I'm making this up on the fly, so don't take this as a serious suggestion, but like, if they had to go somewhere that isn't wreckage, like that is like, say, an old temple or a natural landform that has like a set sort of shape, right? And then the only way to get there is through this, like, the only way to see it is like this one very specific place. So there's like, you solve the distance angle problem that way. But the fact that it's just like, sure, things break different ways all the time. Like, that bit snapped me out altogether. I was like, that makes no sense at all. Like, saber battle with water is cool. I like that.
Yeah, that was all right. Yeah, that was all right.
And I'm a big fan of I know you're going to disagree with this, but I'm a big fan of super stylized kung fu stuff like Crouching Tiger, and I really enjoyed the kind of like, you know, superhuman flips, and I really enjoy seeing the human body do this sort of like magical martial arts thing. And I did a little bit of that here, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a good balance between the sort of kind of more out there stuff and the sort of the more we're just slogging at each other, just like throwing haymakers with these swords, and then we do this beautiful acrobatic feat. I thought that was a really cool little balance.
Hard agree.
Hard agree on Crouching Tiger kung fu style stuff is good, or that balance?
I thought the balance was good. I didn't. I mean, like, I know like the flips and stuff are part of Star Wars since the certainly since the prequel trilogy. But I thought it flowed well for me. It flowed well. The mix between baiting each other and doing the flips and the big jumps, I thought was, it made sense, and it visually was aesthetically pleasing, and it was good. That was a good sequence.
And I mean,
that from a kind of a choreographed combat. I thought it was good choreography.
I'm going to give some props here to the setting it amongst like what is essentially like a typhoon. It's like it's a kids' film. I have to remind myself, and it's not meant to be fine art. So the sort of the really cheap symbolism of like the tumultuous waters while they're fighting, that's kind of cool. Like that adds an extra level. It's not just we're on a random planet. Like that, it's a bit cheap, but I think it's cool for what Star Wars is.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford should have been.
I'm gonna interject.
Oh, interject, Bill. Tell me some stuff. Actually, while you're talking, I need to turn off the heating because I am roasting. So just talk at me there.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I got headphones on.
Okay. So I thought the film is giving a very confused message about violence against fascism.
What? Jesus, I didn't pick up on that at all. Go for it.
Right. So. And it comes into it more later with the final the final sequence and the final showdowns. But so she's to fight Kylo, right? And then she kills Kylo, or like mortally wounds him. But that causes General Organa to die, and like it's fine to murder as many stormtroopers who are, as we know, mostly children that have been enslaved. And that's fine. But as soon as you kill someone whose da and ma were famous, then you do harm to your own movement. That's just kind of like, I don't know, like, was it meant to be something about like the price of violence or whatever? But like, it just really bothered me that, you stab the evil murderous guy, that's fine, do that. But, like, why does it have to have this karmic cost of killing Leia?
And are you saying that later on in the film, more points come up that further reinforce this?
Yes. I think so. Yes, kind of.
Okay, we'll leave a pin on that. It's an interesting reading. I can't say I thought about that when watching the film at all. But so I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say later on. So jump in whenever it's appropriate, yeah?
Yeah.
So Harrison Ford. Oh yeah. Okay. So Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford should have been a voiceover. It was really confused with him actually being there, and I was like, are they force FaceTiming again? Is he actually there? I realize he isn't. Like that becomes clear after like a couple of seconds. But there's a moment of going like, wait, what? Did Han come back from dead? What's happened here? He should have been a voice inside his head or something. And it would have worked just as fine. And it feels like, we just needed to see Harrison Ford again because we can't live without not seeing the old crew one last time, which is a bit kind of, it's a bit lame. And like, that's not really what people want from movies anymore,
I didn't find it distracting. I thought it was fine. Like, I didn't get confused by it, but I agree that it was just kind of, it felt like just kind of nostalgia porn.
Yeah, exactly. And it was unnecessary. Like, again, nostalgia is grand, but like, make it necessary. And that was unnecessary. Okay, now the next point I have here is Star Destroyers with Death Star tech is better than Star Killer Base. So I thought back. So again, for people who haven't seen it, there's Star Destroyers in this one who they've adapted the tech of the Death Star they've shrank it down to Star Destroyer size, so now all Star Destroyers have planet killing abilities. And I was like, wow, wouldn't that have been a lovely thing to put in the first movie, where time has passed, technology has advanced, instead of rehashing the Death Star for a third time, you go, oh yeah, that tech that we developed in all those failed experiments of Death Star, we now shrank it into a Star Destroyer, and that's kind of a little bit more terrifying because it's this somewhat nimble ship that can go around just destroying planets all over the place. And I was like, I wish they did that in the first movie.
At first I was kind of annoyed that, well, why didn't they just use this already if they have the technology? But then, of course, it is new technology given to them by Palpatine. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a little bit silly. Let me gather my thoughts for a second.
While you're gathering your thoughts, good silly. I enjoy the sort of like, it's a giant gun. Like, that's just really fun. It's a Star Destroyer with a giant pistol. Like, that's funny camp space opera. I like it.
It's the whole thing of building a fleet like greater than the First Order fleet originally was, almost, like, judging by the size of it, on this remote planet somewhere. It's just daft. Where do you get the workforce for that? Where do you get the materials for it? And, like, war is an extremely logistics-heavy undertaking. And I know it's a film about space wizards, and I'm not usually that picky about stuff like that, but, like, just... I know, and the fact that it was such an unnecessary escalation as well, or it's just like the story behind that escalation was just so kind of weird and tacked on. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't need to add this new Final Order thing. It's just, it's the First Order are evil enough already, and you diminish them by adding an extra thing on. So those kind of things, they kind of played into each other. For me.
For sure. I fully agree. Hard agree on that one. Next note I can't remember what this is strictly in reference to, but it's too many ghosts equals silly. I do remember there being a lot of ghosts, but there's so many people like FaceTiming with each other and appearing in front of one another, and all of this crack. Like, I was just like, just stop! Like, it's grand. It must have been in reference to Luke Skywalker coming back again.
Yeah, that kind of annoyed me.
Yeah, it's just we don't need to see them.
Just let dead Jedi stay dead.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to see them. Like, it's just like in film time, he died. Luke Skywalker died like what? Maybe 90 minutes ago. It's grand. We don't need to see him again. Just leave it. It is in reference to the Skywalkers. My next point is that X-wing he rolls out of the water should be badly waterlocked and incapable of flying.
And again, it's just nostalgia porn. It's just like continuing to be unable to let go of what happened before. And it's like, it's not just building on what went before, it's relying on what went before.
Sure.
Relying on the original films.
In defense of that part, though, it was set up in the last movie. Like, there's a clear... I remember it being... When they're on Skellig Michael or whatever, there is a pan, there's a bit where they look down into the water and there is the X-Wing. So they didn't just pull it out of nowhere for this film. But it certainly is...
Okay.
You're dead right about it just being, nostalgia for plot's sake.
Yeah.
It's just not as ham-fisted as perhaps I think you think it is. But still. And it should definitely not have been airworthy at all. Now, my next point is just two words. Hope, because it got really hope heavy. You ruined it for me, Bill. You made me aware of this, that Star Wars relies heavily on hope as a military tactic, and they were doing it again, where they're just like, it'll be fine as long as we have hope. And I'm like, stop it, stop it. It's very frustrating.
Yeah. It didn't bother me as much this time, because at least the Resistance were being proactive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, they were actually going in and doing something and, like, deciding to make a strike, and they had kind of something that felt like a coherent plan. And it wasn't just faith and hope solely. But yeah, like, I would like for protagonists to be competent and, good at war and things sometimes in a story about war.
The next 2 points I'm going to blast through real quickly because we've already covered one of them. Snope should have been Palpatine. I think that's fairly obvious. They shouldn't have murdered Snope. He should have taken the Palpatine role. And then I had another 2-word response: fuck feelings. Because they started talking about feelings in the big air battle on that Sith planet. Was it Finn or something? Someone says to Finn, how do you know that is what's going to happen or something? And he literally just goes, feelings. No, they were like, how do you know that starship is the controller for all the rest of the fleet? And he literally just goes, a feeling. And I'm like, oh God, no.
Yeah, I've got a feeling.
Yeah, but it's so bad. So bad. Like, who launches a full scale aerial attack based on a hunch? It's the hunch trope. No good.
Is Finn force sensitive?
Oh yeah, that's implied, because when Rey goes down, doesn't he feel it?
I think so.
Yeah,
And because he's like he wields the lightsaber at a few points. So I mean, I guess if Finn is force sensitive, I can live with that.
yeah, I guess, but I suppose it's just a silly military tactic overall. I think they need to stop with the Force a little bit and stop with the Jedi's a little bit. They should be, I think they really should be few and far between, and that's why I really enjoy the standalone movies. The attitude they have, they're like no lightsabers, or at least very few lightsabers. No Jedi, or at least very few Jedi. I think that's cool. I don't like that, it's like, oh, Luke is force sensitive and Leia's force sensitive and now Rey and then Finn and then everyone we care about is somehow force adjacent, and I don't know, it diminishes the specialness of the force. But then
I think the spin-offs are good for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, next thing, space horses on Star Destroyers is silly. Like, it's not good silly, as in like silly space opera. It was like took me out of the story silly, because it's like they're high up in the atmosphere and like you need masks to breed and stuff. Like, those animals would be wrecked up there, and the humans should be wrecked. I didn't like the humans running around on the outside of a spaceship in atmosphere. Like, that's just completely daft to me. What do you think?
That was class.
What?
I thought it was so fun. I thought it was so much fun. I laughed out loud with the sheer ridiculous joy of it. I thought it was great.
That's hilarious. Because again, I see how it's silly. It just didn't cross into good silly for me. It crossed into like silly. That's nuts, man. That is crazy. So I can never pin your opinions
so
down.
Much fun.
Say again?
I mean, at that point, I was just kind of like, I'd kind of given up on getting that much enjoyment out of the movie, because the beats, like, okay, my problem with the structure of the film, I'm going to take a slight digression here, was that every time there was a beat, or like a bit of progression, there was the immediate thing to cancel it out. So, the heroes get away. Oh, the Knights of Ren are right behind them. The heroes get to the next place. Oh, the Knights of Ren are there. Or the heroes, like, they get something. Oh, Kylo destroys it. And it was just kind of like really rapid fire through these beats without any time for anything to breathe. So I was just kind of like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to ride this out to the end. And then they had a cavalry charge on the wing of a Star Destroyer. And I was just along for the ride at that point. I was just like, yeah, deadly. This is going to be hilarious. They've got these tusked goat horses, and it was just like, I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming, and it had been set up just enough with the other defector stormtroopers, and it was just really silly fun. I really dug that bit.
God, I mean, I can see how you did. I didn't get the similar sense of enjoyment, but I'm glad that it really tickled you. My next point. I said my next point. Fighting without spacesuits on Star Destroyers is a bit silly, and it threw me out of it. But maybe I'm too much of a like proper sci-fi head, or like hard sci-fi.
I think so. And look, they were only a couple of 100 feet up in the air, potentially.
I mean, potentially, but like, when I was watching, I thought to myself, like, wouldn't they be at like hovering at, say, the height of Denver, right? Which is like a mile up in the air. And like, that's perfectly breathable. Like, I've been to Denver, I had no problems. But like, you do any sort of...
You didn't need to wear a spacesuit.
You don't need... Yes, you do not need to wear a spacesuit. But if you do any sort of exercise, and Denver friends of mine will attest to this, if you're not acclimatized, you get really fatigued real quick. Like, it's amazing how much that the increase in altitude affects you if you're not acclimatized to it. And I'm assuming...
I know.
Well, there you go. You were on a mountain, exactly. But so just that they all rocked up without any sort of like gear to like say combat this, on horses that are not acclimatized, that I'm assuming are not acclimatized to this. It just seemed really weird to me. So I don't know, some sort of spacesuit, or even just like a fancy space opera mouthpiece or whatever, or something that you're just kind of like. And I suppose as well, it would sell the sort of threat of like they are very high in the air, like, and they fall, they're gone. Just I don't know. It felt like we were on ground level and we weren't. But I'm kind of sad that I think that way, because you're so happy, and that makes me so happy, and I wish I could experience such joy.
I think that was my favorite part of the entire film. I just thought it was such crack.
Now, what else have I got here? Oh yeah, okay. So we cut back. We're very close to the end here. 4 more points. Next point I have here is, and I am all of the Jedi. Double lightsaber moment. I thought was really cool. When she's fighting Palpatine, I really like that. And the first time around, I had a genuine sort of like, go on, Rey, nail him, let's do it. We're in this together. Fuck it. I got really into it, and it's cool the way she pulled it out, and like the sort of her physical acting I thought was really great there. I love that part.
Yeah, I liked the way she was able to pass the lightsaber to Kylo when he was fighting the Knights of Ren. Like that was that kind of just like a little mysterious. How does the Force power that they've been using to communicate work, and then they use in this kind of practical application here. I thought that was nicely done. I thought those fights were pretty good. Yep. They were good crack. Not as good as the one in the Imperial or in the audience chamber in Last Jedi. I thought that was really great, as I recall. Yeah. But these were perfectly good fights. And again, a nice balance of the wushu stuff. Like Kylo does a cool like moonsault over one of the other guys at one point. And it was a nice shape. Yeah, that was cool. The story kind of again frustrated me a little bit there, and didn't really seem to make that much internal sense. So what are my points on that? Like for that to work, for that section to work, there's no need for her to be Palpatine. There's absolutely nothing that requires her to be a Palpatine there.
Yeah,
she could just be anyone, because like Skywalker. It is no one. Like Anakin Skywalker is no one. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So it's perfectly possible for someone to just be without having a lineage, and her being descended from Palpatine wasn't required in any way. It didn't add. It detracted a lot, in my opinion, from it. There was no inherent need for that to be there. And there's the whole thing. If she kills him, she becomes the new Sith Lord, right? So again, that's very confusing about like the message it's trying to say about violence. Like, is it, if you're violent to them, are you as bad as they are? Well, first of all, that's nonsense. And second of all, why does that apply when it's someone famous, but you can crash thousands of Star Destroyers staffed by millions or hundreds of thousands of them? Like you can kill a load of fascist Navy officers and that's fine, but if you kill the actual dictator, then you're bad. Like what's the message concerning violence here? And then if killing him makes her take on all of the Sith from before, why does that just go away and then she kills him at the end and it's fine?
Yeah. Oh man! Actually, here. Maybe it's that because she became all of the Jedi were fighting with her in that instance where they weren't beforehand. So all of the Jedi overpowered all of the Sith, and they won.
That's silly.
But space goat horses, totally fine.
Yeah, but like that's not like a moral thing, That's just like it's a space goat horses. That's funny and it's cool and it's a big dramatic moment. And there's no weight in the overall narrative applied to it. It doesn't that's not resolving any of the arcs. But this is like the philosophical core of the film, of the story the film is telling. And I know it was messy. It wasn't consistent in tone for me.
I am 100% joking about the comparison to the Space Horses there. I just wanted to bring back Space Horses. Like I fully get that they function as two different things in the story. Yeah. I think your reading of the whole violence against fascist thing is correct there. I didn't clock it at all, but now that you pointed out, that makes sense to me. Yeah, it's really confused, isn't it, when you think about it?
It doesn't have a clear message. And, I mean, I think that's fine. Not everything has to have a message, but I think Star Wars tries to, and it has a history of, and it's held up as that as well. Like it's held up as people talk about this thing. We've had all this media for so long that says you do have to fight and you should fight, and it's good to fight for what you believe in and fight for love and fight for your friends. And then I felt a lot of this film, when it came to doing the actual fighting, it wasn't really clear on its philosophy about that.
Yeah.
Without even at the same time making a coherent point about it being messy and about it being difficult to make those moral choices. It was just kind of a bunch of stuff that didn't really interact all that coherently.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I might adopt that stance, man. That's a really good reading of it. I like it. Palpatine's the whole, just going back to Palpatine, kill me and you will become all the Sith. He gave so much exposition there, and he did it twice. We cut away from him and we cut back to him, and he's still going on about like, if you kill me, I am all the Sith. And I'm like, we know already. And also I felt like, why are you telling the girl this? Like, hey, like, you want her to kill you, right? Don't tell her, oh, by the way, you kill me, bad things happen. Just let her kill you. She's there to kill you. Why are you incentivizing her to save you? Like, what is this about? Stop.
Stop gloating, for the love of God. Stop gloating. Let her think she's winning, and then you surprise her by her turning evil. Come on.
Exactly. It's just crazy. Like, now, I also have here. Oh yeah. Okay. So my do you have anything to add about this part of the movie at all? Because I'm going to skip now to the everything's done part, the wrap up part.
No, I think actually I had 5 points more or less, and yeah, that's all done.
Was the space goat horses one of your points?
One of my points was enjoyed final act.
Oh, okay.
So kind of.
So at this point, everything is Big Bad has been defeated. Everyone, we come back to camp, everyone's celebrating, it's great. My note on this point is creepy Lando. Did you pick up creepy Lando at the end? It was very creepy, Bill.
No.
So he Poe's ex-girlfriend, maybe, whatever she was to Poe. She, or was it? No, it wasn't her. Sorry. The main other defectee stormtrooper we saw on Death Star planet, or whatever. She's sitting around, and she goes over to Lando, and she says something to Lando, or whatever. And then during the conversation, it comes up that she doesn't know who she is or where she's from or whatever. And Lando kind of gives her a look and goes, "Let's find out." And I was kind of like, oh. It felt really weird. It felt like a 70-year-old man had just hit on a young 20-year-old girl. And I was like, oh, I'm sure that wasn't the case.
Did you read that as creepy?
Yeah, purely because of the way he said, "Let's find out." And he gave her like a sort of like a look. I'm sure that wasn't intentional, but that's the only thing I could think of during that. I was like, ugh, my skin crawled.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I didn't read it that way at all. That's interesting. I just kind of read it as paternal.
Perhaps no, paternal man. No. I don't know. I'd have to watch it again. I did actually no. Both times I watched it, and I was like, ugh. It just seemed a bit like I'm Lando, and I like to party. I like to get my freak on with young people. It's like, oh no, let me take you across the galaxy and find out who you are. Oh, again, that's definitely not what they were going for. Obviously, it's just the way he made it to. For me now, and then the final point was this is obviously when we go back to Tatooine and Rey buries the lightsabers, whatever. There's more ghosts, and I'm like, stop at the ghosts again. I was like, too many ghosts.
Calm down
with the ghosts, and that was the end of the movie for me. I took no more notes, so that's me. Have you got anything to wrap up?
A couple of points. In the final sequence on the Sith planet, Kylo gets thrown over. Like Palpatine apparently kills Kylo. He like casts him over a cliff edge or into a crevice or something. But of course he doesn't die, because they can't commit. And then he comes back and he uses Force healing to save Rey from dying. and then they kiss, which was just like a bit forced, like a kind of like, oh, we have to have a kiss. And I know there's big kind of a tension between them, but like at the same time, they've hated each other for ages, and it felt. Oh, look, maybe I shouldn't even say this because I just don't care about romance in films anyway. But it felt like a bit like we have to tick this box to me, and then Kylo dies then, just because they had to like have him die twice for emotional impact. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Can I cut across here? Can I cut across here? Because for 2 points on that.
Yeah.
I thought the that kiss wasn't forced, and I didn't make any notes on it because I just thought it was that whole bit was actually really good in my eyes. I read it as when Rey healed Kylo on the planet. I thought they had a really good sort of like physical acting moment together where they like look at each other in sort of like what seemed like shock and surprise that the act had just been committed. But I also read it as a bit kind of like I know more about you, maybe through like consuming your force. I am closer to you in a way. And then so when they did it again, obviously to a greater degree, like he brought her back from like, you know, she was dead. She didn't just have a wound. There was a even more sort of like we are one person, we know everything about one another, we are together. And then for me that kiss, like it landed totally fine. I really liked it. So I thought that was, I actually didn't think that was ham-fisted. In the same counter to in The Last Jedi, where I thought the Rose thing was totally just out of left field with no setup. I think this had setup.
Okay.
But continue.
That was that. Then when we get back to the Rebel base, and there was this big thing made in headlines that, oh, it has its first on-screen same-sex kiss. And it was by two, I think technically the two of them have names, but they're effectively nameless background characters for like a third of a second. And like, I don't know, just if you're going to make a big deal about it, actually give us actually gay characters.
Yeah.
For the love of God. Like, if you're gonna, like, it's real kind of tokenistic allyship. Like, actually put some gay people in there, for the love of God, and stop, like, doing this minimum stuff so you can, you know, get away without actually committing to a gay storyline. So, you know, you can edit it out in case you want it to be shown in a country that doesn't like that. But then still trying to claim the progressiveness of putting it in. It's tiresome.
Shout out to my beloved Star Trek for not doing that. In which they have an actual proper gay relationship in Discovery, and that's class. They've decided that's the thing they're going to do, and they stuck to it, and that's awesome. Although
then,
sorry, go on.
No, after you, I was going to move on.
Oh, okay. No, the other thing, I don't really want to talk too much about sort of progressive politics here because I'm liable to put my foot in it here. But just let me just do this for a second. I'll cut this out if this is a train wreck. The tokenistic stuff that you talk about there, I fully agree. And the more I hear people who I respect, like online talk about this, the more I realize that like big tech, not even big tech, but big companies in general, they're all like very liberal leaning and very progressive leaning, but it's all very like, for the most part, I think it's all very performative and not like substantive. What's the word I'm looking for? Substantial, the way you said it, how it should be there. And people, more and more, I'm hearing people saying like that they are doing this performative stuff to kind of get in our good books. Because who doesn't want to see gay characters on screen and have a more inclusive and diverse world? And they're doing this to kind of hide, it's a bit conspiratorial here, but to kind of hide their sort of like really nasty, like economic fiscal conservative, you know, like Disney, for example, is like they want you to look at them as being the liberal, progressive, inclusive company, while at the same time they're buying up everyone left, right, and center, creating a massive monopoly on the market and fiscally doing very non-progressive things, you know? And the same can be said of tech companies. You know, they want you, like Twitter wants everyone to think that they're this liberal platform by performatively, you know, knocking off some big celebrities for whatever the things it did wrong, while at the same time they're invading everyone's privacy and our data rights are being just like completely trod all over. And I'm very frustrated with using, you know, minorities and gay people as kind of like shields for otherwise crappy behavior, and then, you know, and like you said, doing nothing substantial, just throwing this in there so we're meant to just be appeased. And I don't know, it really annoys me. I'll cut that if that's a heap of nonsense, but that's just my little rant.
I strongly agree, and I'm not going to elaborate on this topic because I'll just get really angry and we'll go into a long digression.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad you agree, because I'm always very concerned about, because, you know, because you can read what I just said as being like down with gay characters in media. You know, it's like he wants Disney not to include
I don't think anyone sensibly could. I don't think anyone sensibly could.
Well, that is nice.
It's a question of hypocrisy on the part of people who are doing that, and they're using a veneer of progressive politics to appear a certain way, to distract from the actual bad things they do. Absolutely. And that is not saying that we shouldn't have gay characters. Mm-hmm. That is, it's not saying that in any way whatsoever. It's saying that doing that doesn't excuse other things that you do.
Yeah, and like if there was substantial gay relationships in Star Wars, then, you know, great. That is great. But this tokenistic nonsense is just, yeah. Anyhow, yeah, like you said, we shouldn't elaborate on this because we both may end up getting very angry. So anyhow, that was Star Wars. Oh, sorry, you said you had a couple of points. Are you finished your points?
I did. I'm not.
You're not? Tell me more.
I am not finished. Lupita Nyong'o's character giving Chewie the medal. I assume that was meant to be that's the medals that they all got at the end of New Hope that Chewie didn't get. And I felt that was another kind of cynical bit of nostalgia porn.
I didn't clock that at all, but that sounds dead right.
I think that's what it was, yeah. I thought it was a bit silly. Ending on Tatooine. I kind of liked. Yeah. I kind of enjoyed that. And then, like, she calls herself at the end Rey Skywalker, and, you know, it's kind of leaning back towards you get to choose about yourself, which the rest of the film doesn't support at all. It doesn't lean into that whatsoever. But I thought it was a nice nod, and you know, that was I would have liked more of that kind of thing. Pardon me. Do you have any idea what the significance of the gold lightsaber was?
Oh, I gave it no thought other than she is her own person now. So she gets her own lightsaber. It's not going to be Luke's colors. It's not going to be Sith colors. It's going to be her own thing. That's as far as I thought about it. I'm going
to Google this real quick.
Oh, it better not be some tie-in to some obscure thing in the lore that will make movies about or some crap. While you're Googling, though, I did enjoy the mechanicalness of the lightsaber. It had the little, like, flick to turn on, the little rotary blade to turn on.
Oh, yeah, it was operated by, like, a kind of a wheel. Yeah, that was cool.
I thought that was really cool. And I liked the way, like, the design of it was very reminiscent of her staff. Like, it was wrapped in sort of leather. Like, it looked kind of cool.
I didn't cop that. Okay. That's cool.
Being a person who wants everything around them to be dark, I really enjoy that it's like, as far as I can remember, it's like a black blade, as opposed to like the shiny silver of everyone else's thing. I really enjoyed that too. But no feelings on the gold saber.
Oh, okay, I think it was just she built her own one. That seems to be the suggestion here. So she built it, and that's, I guess, the color she chose or whatever. So okay, that makes sense.
What were you thinking?
I was wondering, was that like it was something from previous lore that I had forgotten, right, like something from the other movies I'd forgotten, or was it a reference to something in? I know the old expanded universe isn't canon for these films, but if it was a reference to something like that, maybe.
Yeah, but they're recanonizing a lot of the
yeah.
old expanded universe. Like, I believe from listening to Star Wars nerds that Solo is like heavily bringing back or heavily brought back a lot of the expanded universe into canon. Um,
Okay.
so I would totally believe if this gold thing was actually expanded universe and they brought it in, like that's their modus operandi at the moment. I don't think we've ever seen a gold one before.
Not that I'm aware of, possibly in like the cartoons or something, but I'm not sure. I can't think of a gold one ever before, which is kind of what I was curious about. Yeah, apparently if you look at the details, it's clear that her yellow lightsaber was made from her quarterstaff. Or
Okay, yeah,
it has some of the same design elements, so that's kind of neat.
yeah, I liked it.
And yeah, and that brings us up to the end.
So overall, just to reiterate, because I spent a lot of time complaining about how silly and how silly it was, and how nothing made any sense. My overall reaction to the movie, though, is just like it's just nonsense fun. Like, I had fun watching it, despite there being a lot of moments where it's like, oh, retcon, silliness. My overall sense was like we're going on a weird and wacky, colorful, high-paced space adventure that makes little to no sense. And do you know what? I am cool with that because this is Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't avant-garde cinema. Let's all chill the beans a little bit and just enjoy the pictures.
Yeah. My overall thing, I was kind of not that into it for the most part. I was kind of, I found it quite dull for a lot, and a lot of stuff, a lot of the storytelling and the pacing of it I didn't like, but I quite enjoyed the end. So I wouldn't say it was a outright bad film. Like, it wasn't an offensively bad film. It was just kind of not great, but with a fun conclusion.
I know you're not going to want to do this, Bill, but I have to ask: can you rank these new movies, just the new movies, just these three? Where would they go for you?
I mean, there were things I disliked about all of them. So you mean just the trilogy?
Just this trilogy, and never mind the rest of them. Doesn't matter where you go over the rest of them. Just these three standalone. This three thing. This trilogy.
Oh, it's very tough.
It's
very tough. Because I wouldn't go so far to say I enjoyed any of them, so I'm going to have to think about like which decisions were made that I approved of, despite not enjoying it overall. Okay, give me yours, and while you're doing yours, I'll think about it.
So I simultaneously have two rankings in my head, both being equally valid depending on what cap I put on. If I put on the just evaluating the movies, in isolation, completely in isolation, they would go best to worst would be 1, 3, 2.
Okay.
But I still, even after all these years, I've derived no enjoyment from watching a rehash of an old film. And so, like, if I were to rank based on like what ones I'd actually watch again, it would be 3, 2, 1. Like Force Awakens, because of the fact that it's just New Hope 2.0, I have no feelings toward it, no compulsion to ever watch it again, and like wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I would recommend The Last Jedi over that because it's like, at least it's like, you know, crazy as opposed to like utterly benign. So it's either 1, 3, 2 or 3, 2, 1. I have both of those in my head at the exact same time.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could make a case for 2 because it almost does so many really interesting things, but just it doesn't commit to them. Like if 2 had more conviction in itself, it would be a great film, I think.
I mean, what's mad though, man? Like, I listen to the Star Wars Minute podcast. It'll be linked in the show notes. It's a podcast where they go through each of the movies. Every episode, it analyzes 1 minute of the movies, and they have guests on for every week of episodes, for every 7 minutes. And at the end of the week, they ask all the guests to rank the movies. And time again, man, The Last Jedi is right up there, like on top of everything. Like, they go Last Jedi, New Hope. And it's just like, I think that's, and I bring this up to say, like, I think this is maybe what you're talking about. Like, you could make a case that it's doing brave things, and because of that, people are like it gets up there, even if it doesn't deliver. It's a weird one, The Last Jedi.
Yeah, like it's nearly really really good, but the ways in which it fail fail enough to bring it way down. But the others just kind of played it safe, So they were more successful. They were more successful in what they were trying to do, but what they were trying to do was just less interesting because they played it too safe. So I think you could say either 2, 3, 1, if you're going like for being more interesting, or for like what actually works as a film. 1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2 works. Okay, so that is very. So we're very very close. The only difference with me is that I would, where you go 2, 3, 1, I go 3, 2, 1. That's interesting.
Okay.
They're a real difficult bunch to group, and this is specifically why I ask. Yeah. Anyhow, that's it. That's the end of the Skywalker saga. That's it. Now we just get to.
Well, unless I mean, we thought that it was fully told with 6 films. Maybe in another 20 years they'll make episodes 10 through 12.
No, man. What they'll do is they'll just reboot the exact same films again. They'll do what Disney's doing with all the live action stuff. It's just Jungle Book again. Just to maintain copyright. That's what they'll do. But on a more serious suggestion, what do you think is going to happen next? Like, I'm assuming they're going to have to. Are they just going to go standalone, or are they going to start up a new saga altogether, or what's the jazz here?
Well, I mean, The Mandalorian seems to be doing pretty well, and they have other standalone films in the works, don't they? I mean, Solo did really badly, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a success, and I thought it was a very poor film, which I was disappointed by because I like Ron Howard. But I think they have other standalones, in the works. There was talk of a Lando standalone, which is also just a fun thing to say. Lando standalone, and that would have Donald Glover, so that would just be fun because Donald Glover is extremely fun. So yeah, I think there are if you look it up, I think there's other stuff that has been planned, and they've other things in the works for Disney Plus. But I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, I hope whatever they do, I hope they quickly just drop the characters we know. Just like, it's fine.
I would like standalones that make the universe feel bigger rather than making it just the same things over and over again. It's expand the universe. If it's an expanded universe, actually go and expand the damn thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell us a story. Give us a cop procedural on Coruscant. Something like that.
Yeah, I fully agree. So anyhow, that is that. It suddenly occurs to me it's now 10:30 at night, and it is a work day for both myself and the captain tomorrow. So I'm going to, if it's okay with you, Bill, I'm going to wrap up now. Yeah?
That is fine by me.
So to everyone listening, this is not going to come out on Christmas, unfortunately, because of various scheduling things, but Merry Christmas. I hope your Christmas was good. I hope you have a very happy new year, and Bill and I will see you in 2020, in the future.
See you next decade.
Have a good one. Until next time, Edgar out.